She laughed at dinner and called another man her backup husband. Everyone laughed, except me. I smiled, raised my glass, and said, "Then you're my backup wife, which means I'll start looking for a new one." The silence that followed, that was the real punchline. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. Now, let's dive in. The restaurant was one of those places where the lighting is too dim and the wine flows too freely. Laughter bounced off exposed brick walls, glasses clinked with the rhythm of good times, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. Or at least it looked perfect. My name is Mark. I'm 34 years old, and I've been married to Sienna for 6 years. 6 years of building something I thought was unbreakable. 6 years of inside jokes, shared dreams, and promises whispered in the dark. 6 years of believing that we were solid, that we were the couple other people envied, that what we had was real. That night, we sat around a table with 3 other couples, friends we'd known since college, the kind of friends who'd been at our wedding, who'd helped us move into our first apartment, who'd held our hands through the miscarriage 2 years ago. These were our people, or so I thought. Sienna sat beside me, her hand occasionally brushing mine, her laughter bright and easy. She wore that blue dress I loved, the one that made her eyes look like the ocean at twilight. The fabric caught the candlelight in a way that made her seem almost ethereal. She was radiant, happy, beautiful in that effortless way that had first made me fall in love with her 7 years ago when we met at a mutual friend's birthday party. And across from us sat Jason. Jason was Sienna's colleague at the marketing firm where she worked. Tall, charming, with that effortless confidence that comes from never having to try too hard. Square jaw, perfect teeth. The kind of guy who looked like he'd stepped out of a cologne advertisement. I'd met him a handful of times at company events. He was fine. Harmless, I thought. Just another coworker in Sienna's orbit. Just another face in the crowd of people she worked with every day. But lately, his name had been coming up more often. Too often. Jason suggested this restaurant. Jason thinks we should pivot the campaign. Jason sent me the funniest meme today. Jason and I had to work late on the presentation. Jason said the funniest thing during the meeting. Jason, Jason, Jason. His name had become a constant background hum in our conversations. At first, I didn't think much of it. Sienna had always been passionate about her work, always talked about her projects and colleagues. It was one of the things I loved about her drive, her ambition, the way she lit up when she talked about a successful campaign. But this was different. I noticed things. Small things that individually meant nothing but together painted a picture I didn't want to see. The way she lit up when her phone buzzed with his texts. The way she'd smile at her screen and laugh before typing back quickly, fingers flying over the keyboard with an urgency she never showed when I texted her. The way she'd dress a little sharper on days when they had meetings together, choosing that particular blouse, wearing the perfume I'd bought her for our anniversary, taking extra time with her makeup, the way she'd casually mention him in conversations, weaving him into our lives like he belonged there, like he was part of our story. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was insecure, that I needed to trust her, that this was just friendship, just workplace camaraderie, just 2 people who happened to work well together. I told myself that suspicion was poison, that jealousy would kill what we had faster than any actual betrayal. So I smiled. I nodded. I pretended not to notice the way her entire face changed when she talked about him. I pretended not to see the way she'd check her phone constantly when we were supposed to be having quality time together. I pretended that everything was fine. But deep down, in a place I didn't want to acknowledge, I knew something had shifted. The foundation of our marriage, once solid as granite, had developed hairline fractures I was too afraid to examine too closely. The dinner was supposed to be casual, a Friday night unwind after a brutal work week. We'd all been looking forward to it, a chance to decompress, to laugh, to remember what life was like outside of deadlines and responsibilities. The wine was flowing, plates of tapas crowded the table, patatas bravas, gambas al ajillo, manchego cheese with membrillo, pan con tomate, and everyone was trading stories about office drama and vacation plans. Our friends Marcus and Emily were talking about their upcoming trip to Portugal. David and Sarah were complaining about their nightmare HOA. Tom and Jessica were debating whether to get a dog or a cat. Normal conversation. Easy conversation. The kind of night where everyone leaves feeling a little lighter than when they arrived. Then came the toast. Our friend Marcus stood up, glass raised, grinning like an idiot. His cheeks were flushed from the wine, his tie loosened, his shirt sleeves rolled up. To good friends, great wine, and even better partners who put up with our nonsense. Everyone raised their glasses. Laughter rippled around the table, the warm, genuine laughter of people who'd known each other long enough to have seen each other at their best and worst. And then Sienna, emboldened by her third glass of Merlot, looked at Jason with a playful smile and said it. Jason's basically my backup husband. He takes care of everything you forget, Mark. The words hung in the air for a moment before the table erupted in laughter. Jason grinned, playing along, raising his glass toward her with exaggerated gallantry. Happy to serve, milady, he said with a mock salute, his voice dripping with theatrical charm. Everyone thought it was hilarious, a harmless joke between colleagues. A bit of playful teasing at my expense, the kind of ribbing that happens among friends who are comfortable with each other. Marcus laughed so hard he nearly spilled his wine. Emily was wiping tears from her eyes. David slapped the table. Tom was shaking his head with a grin. Everyone laughed. Except me. I sat there, glass halfway to my lips, and felt something inside me crack. Not break, not yet. Just crack. Like ice under too much weight, splintering in ways no one else could see. Like a windshield with a stone chip that you know will eventually spider out into something irreparable. Because here's the thing about jokes. They're only funny when everyone's in on them. When both people are laughing. When there's no truth hiding underneath the punchline. When it's just absurdity for the sake of absurdity, not a barbed comment wrapped in humor to make it socially acceptable. But this wasn't just a joke. This was her telling a table full of our closest friends that I wasn't enough, that I forgot things, that I was inadequate, that another man had to pick up my slack, that I was replaceable, that somewhere in her mind she'd already imagined a version of her life where I wasn't the lead but the understudy. And she did it with a smile, with laughter, with an ease that suggested this thought had crossed her mind before, many times, until it felt comfortable enough to say out loud. I looked at her. She was still laughing, her hand on Jason's arm, her fingers resting there just a moment too long. Her eyes were bright with wine and mischief and something else I couldn't quite name. She didn't even glance my way, didn't check to see if I was okay with it. Didn't care. Didn't think for a second that maybe, just maybe, calling another man your backup husband in front of your actual husband might be crossing a line. In that moment, something shifted, something fundamental. The foundation I thought we'd built together revealed itself to be built on sand. All those years, all those promises, all those moments I'd treasured, suddenly they all felt fragile, like I'd been building a house on ground that was slowly eroding beneath me while I pretended not to notice the cracks forming. I could have made a scene, could have stood up, called her out, demanded an apology right there in front of everyone, could have thrown my wine in her face or Jason's, could have turned the table over, could have shouted, could have let the rage and humiliation and betrayal pour out of me in a torrent that would have ruined the evening for everyone. But that's not who I am. I don't explode. I don't rage. I don't make scenes. I go quiet. It's what my father taught me, watching him endure his own disappointments with dignity. A man who controls his emotions controls his destiny, he used to say. I'd always admired that about him, the way he could face anything with calm composure. I'd built my whole life around that principle. I lowered my glass, placed it carefully on the table, and smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes, the kind that says, I see you, and I'll remember this. The kind that masks a decision being made in real time, a bridge being burned so quietly that no one notices the smoke. The conversation moved on. Someone started talking about a new Netflix series they were binging. Another person complained about their boss who kept scheduling meetings during lunch. The moment passed for everyone else. The laughter faded into the next topic, the next joke, the next bottle of wine. But not for me. I sat there, calculating, thinking, feeling the weight of 6 years pressing against my chest. 6 years of being the man who remembered anniversaries, who cooked dinner when she worked late, who held her when she cried about work stress, who built a life around the idea that we were a team. 6 years of being loyal, faithful, present. 6 years of choosing her every single day, and she just told the world I was disposable, that I was forgettable, that I needed a replacement waiting in the wings. So I waited. I let the conversation flow around me like water around a stone. I sipped my wine slowly, savoring the bitter notes. I nodded at the right moments. I smiled when appropriate. I played my part perfectly. The good-natured husband who could take a joke, who wasn't insecure, who understood that it was all in good fun. But inside, I was making calculations, drawing lines, counting costs. And then, when there was a lull in the conversation, when everyone was reaching for their glasses or checking their phones or signaling the waiter for another bottle, I spoke. My voice was calm, steady, almost cheerful, the kind of tone you'd use to comment on the weather or compliment the food. That's funny, Sienna. I raised my glass slowly, deliberately, and looked directly at her. Let the words fall like stones into still water. Because you're my backup wife, so I guess I'll start looking for a new one. The table went silent. I mean dead silent. The kind of silence that swallows sound, that makes you hyper-aware of every breath, every shifting chair, every awkward swallow, every beating heart. The kind of silence where you can hear the candles flickering and the distant clatter of dishes in the kitchen. The kind that makes time feel like it's stopped. Sienna's smile froze on her face. Literally froze, like someone had pressed pause on a video. Her hand, still resting on Jason's arm, slipped away slowly, as if in a dream. She stared at me, eyes wide, pupils dilated, trying to figure out if I was joking, searching my face for the telltale signs of humor, for the crack in the facade that would let her know this was just playful banter. I wasn't joking. Jason shifted in his seat, suddenly very interested in the label on his wine bottle. His confidence evaporated like morning dew. He looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Marcus cleared his throat uncomfortably, glancing between Sienna and me like a spectator at a tennis match. Emily's eyes went wide, her hand flying to her mouth. David and Sarah exchanged a look that said, "Should we leave?" Tom suddenly found his napkin fascinating. The shift in energy was palpable. The warm, convivial atmosphere of moments before had been replaced by something cold and sharp. Everyone at that table understood instantly that they'd just witnessed something break, something important, something that couldn't be easily fixed. "Mark," Sienna started, her voice small, uncertain, stripped of the confidence she'd had just seconds ago. "I was just kidding." "I know," I said. I kept my voice light, my smile easy, my posture relaxed. "Me too." But she knew. Everyone at that table knew. The tone, the timing, the deliberate echo of her own words. It was all too perfect to be spontaneous. This wasn't a joke bouncing back. This was a line being drawn, a boundary being established, a message being sent. The joke had become something else entirely. A declaration, a turning point, the moment that would later be remembered as when everything changed. I finished my wine in one smooth motion, appreciating the last swallow, set the glass down with precision, and stood up. My movements were calm, controlled, purposeful. "I'm going to head out. Early morning tomorrow." I pulled out my wallet, dropped enough cash on the table to cover our entire meal, plus a generous tip, and looked at Sienna. "Stay. Enjoy the rest of your evening." "Mark, don't be dramatic," she started, her voice rising with a hint of desperation and anger. "I'm not being dramatic," I interrupted gently but firmly. "I'm just tired." And I was. Tired of pretending, tired of ignoring the signs, tired of being made to feel small, tired of being an afterthought in my own marriage. I nodded to the table, a simple gesture of farewell. "Everyone have a good night." I grabbed my jacket from the back of my chair and walked out. Behind me, I heard the scramble of conversation trying to restart, trying to smooth over what had just happened, nervous laughter, hushed whispers. I heard Sienna's nervous laugh, her attempts to play it off as Mark being sensitive, or Mark can't take a joke. I heard Jason trying to change the subject. I heard Marcus asking if everything was okay, but I didn't look back. I walked through the restaurant, past the other diners enjoying their meals, past the hostess stand, out into the cool night air. The contrast was stark, from the warm, wine-soaked atmosphere of the restaurant to the crisp, clear reality of the October evening. I got into my car, sat there in the parking lot for a long time, hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing, just breathing, just existing in this new reality I'd stepped into. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. I could see it lighting up in the passenger seat. Text after text. But I didn't reach for it. And I realized something sitting there in that car, watching couples walk in and out of the restaurant, seeing their smiles and hearing their laughter. I wasn't joking. I wasn't trying to be clever or get back at her or win some petty argument. I was done. Not with a bang, not with a fight, not with screaming or accusations or dramatic proclamations. Just done. Sometimes betrayal doesn't announce itself with infidelity or lies. Sometimes it arrives wearing the mask of a joke, a casual comment, a moment of thoughtlessness that reveals what someone really thinks when their guard is down, when the wine is flowing and the filters come off and the truth slips out dressed as humor. She'd called another man her backup husband in front of our friends. She'd reduced our marriage to a punchline. She'd made me small. She'd told everyone at that table that I was inadequate, forgettable, replaceable, that she'd already thought about alternatives, that in her mind I was conditional, not essential, and I'd finally stopped pretending it didn't hurt. I started the car and drove home, alone. The streets were quiet, the city winding down for the night. I drove past the park where we'd had our first picnic, past the coffee shop where I'd asked her to marry me, past the grocery store where we did our weekly shopping together every Sunday morning. All of it felt like memories from someone else's life now. My phone started buzzing before I even got home. It sat in my cup holder, lighting up every few seconds like a desperate heartbeat. Sienna. Baby, I'm sorry. It was just a joke. Sienna. You're really going to leave like that? Sienna. Everyone's asking if we're okay. You're embarrassing me. Sienna. This is so childish, Mark. Sienna. Fine. Be that way. I'll get a ride home. I didn't reply. Didn't even look at the messages. Just drove in silence, listening to the hum of the engine and the sound of my own breathing. I got home, parked in the driveway, and sat there for another 10 minutes, watching the lights from our living room window. The house we'd bought together 3 years ago. The house we'd painted together, argued over furniture placement in, made love in every room. The house where we'd planned to raise children, grow old together, build a lifetime of memories. The life we'd built. All of it suddenly feeling like a stage set, pretty on the outside, hollow on the inside. When I finally went in, the house was empty. Quiet. Still. I stood in the kitchen, looking at the calendar on the fridge covered with our plans. Grocery lists, dinner dates, her mother's birthday circled in green, a vacation circled in red marker for next month. Cabo San Lucas, a trip we'd been planning for 6 months. All of it felt like a lie now, like I'd been living in a house of cards, and one joke had been enough to bring it all down. My phone buzzed again. Sienna. Mark, seriously, don't be like this. Sienna. I'm coming home. We need to talk. Sienna. You can't just shut down every time you don't like something. I turned my phone face down on the counter and went upstairs. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't make a scene. I didn't throw things or punch walls or do any of the dramatic gestures you see in movies. I just walked into our bedroom, with its king-sized bed and the framed photos of us on the walls and her perfume bottles on the dresser, and gathered some clothes. I pulled items from drawers methodically, underwear, socks, t-shirts, a few pairs of jeans, a couple of dress shirts for work, my toiletries from the bathroom, my phone charger, my laptop, the things I needed to exist separately, and I moved them to the guest room down the hall. The guest room was small, barely big enough for the full-sized bed and a dresser. We'd always joked that it was more of a large closet than a proper bedroom. It's where her parents stayed when they visited, where friends crashed after parties. It had never been my space. Until now. When Sienna came home an hour later, I heard her footsteps on the stairs, heard her stop outside the bedroom door. She was probably expecting me to be in bed, sulking, ready for the fight, ready to yell or cry or slam doors, ready to engage in the dramatic confrontation she'd been building up in her head during the ride home, but I wasn't there. Mark? Her voice echoed through the house, uncertain and small. I didn't answer. She checked the bathroom, the home office, the living room. I could hear her moving through the house, opening doors, searching. She found me in the guest room, unpacking my clothes into the small dresser. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, still wearing that blue dress. Her makeup was smudged now, mascara running slightly from tears or anger or both. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Moving," I said simply. I didn't look at her, just kept folding. My hands moved with mechanical precision. Fold the shirt, smooth it flat, place it in the drawer. "Moving? You're being ridiculous." I kept folding, calm, methodical. "I don't think I am." "It was a joke, Mark. A stupid joke. You're acting like I cheated on you." I paused, holding one of my shirts, and looked at her. Really looked at her. And I saw something I hadn't seen before. Or maybe something I'd been refusing to see. Entitlement. The assumption that I'd just get over it. That I'd bend, that I'd forgive, because that's what I always did. That this was just another bump in the road that we'd smooth over with time and apologies and eventually laugh about. "Maybe you didn't cheat," I said quietly. "But you disrespected me, in front of our friends. You made another man more important than me, even as a joke, and you didn't even think twice about it." "Oh my God, you're so sensitive. And you're so comfortable making me feel small," I interrupted. My voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath it now. The kind of hardness that comes from a decision already made. "That's the problem, Sienna. You're comfortable with it. You don't even realize you're doing it." She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing, searching for the right words, searching for the argument that would make this make sense, that would put me back in my place, that would restore the order she was used to. But there weren't any, not anymore. "Sleep wherever you want," she finally said, her voice tight with anger and hurt. "But this is insane." She left, slamming the door behind her hard enough that the walls shook. I finished unpacking and lay down on the narrow guest bed, staring at the ceiling. The mattress was harder than I was used to. The room smelled like laundry detergent and dust. The walls were bare except for a single piece of generic art, a seascape someone had given us as a housewarming gift that we'd never found a place for in the main rooms. And for the first time in months, I slept soundly, deeply, without the tension I'd been carrying in my shoulders, without the knot in my stomach, without the anxiety of trying to pretend everything was fine when it so clearly wasn't. The next week was strange, like living in a museum of your own life. We lived in the same house but existed in different worlds, orbiting each other without connection. I stopped doing the things I'd always done, the small gestures that had defined our relationship. I stopped making her coffee in the morning, the way she liked it with exactly 2 sugars and a splash of cream. Stopped asking about her day when she came home from work. Stopped cooking dinner for 2. Stopped leaving little notes on the counter. Stopped texting her throughout the day to share funny things or random thoughts. I made my own meals, ate in silence at the kitchen island while she ate in the living room, and cleaned up after myself. I did my own laundry, managed my own schedule, existed as a completely independent entity within the same 4 walls. When she tried to talk to me, I was polite but distant, cordial, like she was a roommate I barely knew, like we were strangers who happened to share a lease. "Can you grab milk when you're out?" "Sure." "Are we still going to your mom's on Sunday?" "You can if you want. I'll pass." "Mark, this is childish." "Okay." That okay drove her crazy. I could see it in her face every time I said it. She wanted a fight, wanted emotion, wanted me to yell, to argue, to give her something to push against, some reaction that would confirm I still cared enough to be angry. But I didn't. I just existed, separately. I opened a new bank account and quietly started transferring money. Not all of it. I wasn't trying to hide assets or be vindictive. Just half. My half. The half I'd contributed over 6 years of marriage. I called the bank on my lunch break and set everything up over the phone. The customer service representative was cheerful and efficient, congratulating me on opening a new account, completely unaware she was helping me dismantle my marriage. I looked up apartments online, spent my evenings scrolling through listings, calculating costs, imagining myself in different spaces, studio apartments, 1-bedrooms, places with parking, places near my office, places that were mine and mine alone. I called a lawyer just to understand my options. We lived in a no-fault divorce state, which made things simpler. No need to prove anything, no need to document wrongdoing, just a dissolution of a union that had run its course. The lawyer was professional and sympathetic without being patronizing. "Take your time," she said. "Make sure this is what you want." But I already knew. I didn't do any of this with anger or spite. I did it with the calm clarity of someone who'd finally accepted the truth. The marriage was over. It had been over the moment she laughed and called another man her backup husband. Maybe it had been dying for longer than that, and I'd just been too afraid to see it. Maybe it had been sick for months or even years, and I'd been in denial, applying Band-Aids to a wound that needed surgery. But I saw it now. Sienna noticed. Of course she did. You don't share your life with someone for 6 years and not notice when they disappear. She noticed the absence of me in ways she'd never noticed my presence. No more notes left on the counter. No more inside jokes texted during the day. No more warmth when she came home. No more kiss on the forehead when I left for work. No more, "How was your day?" No more shared meals. No more laughter echoing through the house. I'd become a ghost in my own house. Present but not there. Visible but unseen. And it terrified her. I watched the realization dawn on her over the course of that week. Watched her try different approaches. First she tried anger, slamming doors, making passive-aggressive comments, acting like I was the one being unreasonable. Then she tried guilt, tears, apologies, reminders of all the good times we'd had. Then she tried seduction, wearing my favorite outfits, cooking my favorite meals, touching my arm when she walked past. None of it worked, because I'd already left. My body was still in the house, but my heart and mind had moved out. One night, about a week after the dinner, she cornered me in the kitchen. I was making a sandwich, just turkey and cheese, nothing fancy, and she appeared in the doorway like she'd been waiting for the right moment. Her arms were crossed. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She was wearing one of my old college sweatshirts, the one she always wore when she was feeling vulnerable. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded. "Doing what?" I asked, not looking up. I was focused on spreading mustard evenly across the bread, a task that suddenly seemed very important. This, the silent treatment, the coldness, acting like I don't exist. I finished making my sandwich, put the knife in the sink, and finally looked at her. I'm not giving you the silent treatment, Sienna. I just don't have anything to say. You don't have anything to say? We're married, Mark. You can't just shut down like this. I'm not shutting down. I'm shutting you out. There's a difference. Her face crumpled like paper. You're really going to throw away 6 years because of one stupid joke? I set my plate down on the counter and turned to face her fully, gave her my complete attention for the first time in a week. It wasn't just the joke. It was the way you said it, the way you didn't even think about how it would make me feel, the way you've been talking about Jason for months like he's some kind of hero, the way you've made me feel like an afterthought in my own marriage. That's not fair, isn't it? My voice was still calm, but there was something final in it now, something she'd never heard before. When was the last time you looked at me the way you look at him? When was the last time you laughed at something I said instead of something he texted you? When was the last time I felt like I mattered to you? When was the last time you chose me first? She opened her mouth, then closed it, opened it again, but no words came out, because she didn't have an answer. Or maybe she did, but she didn't want to say it out loud. Tears spilled down her cheeks, leaving tracks through her makeup. I love you, she whispered. I know, I said. And I meant it. I believed she loved me in her way. But love isn't enough when it comes without respect, without consideration, without the basic courtesy of thinking before you speak. But you don't respect me, and I'm done living in a marriage where I'm the punchline. I picked up my sandwich and walked past her, close enough that I could smell her perfume, the same perfume I'd bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. Close enough that I could see the pain in her eyes. Close enough that part of me wanted to stop, to hold her, to tell her it would be okay. But I kept walking. Behind me, I heard her sob, a broken, desperate sound. Mark, please? I kept walking, down the hall, up the stairs, to my room, the guest room that had become my sanctuary. I closed the door quietly behind me and sat on the bed, sandwich untouched on the nightstand, and stared at the wall. And I felt nothing. No guilt, no anger, no regret, just peace. The kind of peace that comes from finally telling the truth, from finally standing up for yourself, from finally refusing to accept less than you deserve. 2 weeks later, things came to a head. I'd been sleeping in the guest room, living my separate life, preparing quietly for the inevitable. The apartment search had narrowed down to 3 options. I'd found a place I liked, a 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a newer building across town. Small, furnished, available immediately, clean slate, fresh start. A place where every object wouldn't carry a memory, where every corner wouldn't remind me of what I'd lost or what I'd never really had. I was planning to move out that weekend. I hadn't told Sienna yet. There didn't seem to be a point. What was there to say? I'm leaving felt both too dramatic and too obvious. She had to know this was coming, had to feel the way we were circling each other like planets in decaying orbits, getting further apart with each rotation. That Friday night, I came home from work a little later than usual. I'd stayed behind to finish up a project, needing the distraction of work, the simplicity of problems that could be solved with logic and effort. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed all the lights in the house were on, every window blazing. It looked almost festive, like we were having a party, but we weren't. I walked in to find Sienna sitting at the kitchen table, my laptop open in front of her. My laptop. The one I'd been using to search for apartments, to organize my finances, to email the lawyer. She'd been snooping. Her face was blotchy, mascara smudged down her cheeks in dark rivers. Her hands were shaking as they rested on either side of the keyboard. She'd been crying for a while from the looks of it, her eyes swollen, her nose red, tissues scattered across the table like snow. You're leaving, she said when she saw me. Not a question, a statement. Her voice was flat, defeated. I set my keys down on the counter with deliberate care. Yes. You were just going to leave, without even talking to me? What's there to talk about? I asked calmly. You made it clear how you feel. I'm just accepting it. I made a mistake. She stood up, the chair scraping against the floor with a harsh sound. One mistake, Mark, and you're going to destroy everything we built? You destroyed it, I said quietly. I'm just walking away from the rubble. That's not fair. It was a stupid joke at a stupid dinner. I apologized. No, you didn't. I met her eyes, and I saw her flinch, saw the truth of my words land. You never actually apologized. You told me I was too sensitive. You told me I was embarrassing you. You told me I was being dramatic. You told me it was just a joke, and I couldn't take it. But you never once said, I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I disrespected you in front of our friends. I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't enough. Tears streamed down her face faster now, an endless cascade. I'm saying it now. I'm so sorry, Mark. Please don't leave. I wanted to feel something. Wanted to feel my heart crack open at her tears. Wanted to rush to her side, hold her, tell her it was okay. Wanted to be the man I'd always been, the one who fixed things, who smoothed over conflicts, who put her needs before his own. But I didn't feel any of that. I just felt tired. Tired and empty and ready to be done with all of it. I believe you're sorry, I said. But sorry doesn't change anything. You showed me who you are when you think no one's watching, when you're comfortable, when your guard is down. And that person? She doesn't respect me. That's not true. Then why did you say it? I asked. My voice was gentle, but the question landed like a hammer. If you respected me, if you valued me, why would that joke even occur to you? Why would you put another man above me, even as a joke? Why would you reduce 6 years of marriage to a punchline for a cheap laugh? She didn't have an answer, just stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, searching for words that didn't exist, searching for an explanation that would make sense, that would undo the damage, that would reset us back to before. But there was no before anymore, only after. You turned our marriage into a punchline, Sienna. I picked up my keys again, felt the cool metal in my palm. I'm just giving it an ending. I walked toward the door. Mark. She followed me, grabbing my arm with both hands. Her grip was desperate, trembling. Don't do this. Please, I'll do anything. I'll quit my job. I'll never talk to Jason again. I'll delete his number. I'll go to therapy. I'll change my schedule. I gently removed her hands from my arm, holding them for just a moment. They were cold, shaking. I looked down at her fingers, the fingers that still wore the wedding ring I'd slipped on 6 years ago in front of everyone we loved, promising forever. It's not about Jason, I said softly. It's about you, about how you see me, about how you treat me when you think it doesn't matter, about the fact that you didn't think twice before humiliating me in front of our closest friends. Jason is just a symptom. The disease is that you stopped valuing me a long time ago, and I was too blind or too scared to see it. I value you, she sobbed. I do. I love you so much, Mark. You're my whole world. I was your whole world, I corrected gently. Past tense. But somewhere along the way, I became wallpaper, background noise, the guy you come home to after spending all day thinking about someone else. That's not true, isn't it? I released her hands. When's the last time you asked about my work, about my dreams, about how I'm feeling? When's the last time you initiated anything between us? A date, a conversation, intimacy? When's the last time I felt like you actually saw me instead of just the functions I perform in your life? She stared at me, tears streaming, unable to answer because we both knew the truth. I'll change, she whispered. I promise I'll change. I'll be better. I'll pay attention. I'll make you feel loved. Just don't leave. Please don't leave me. I know you will, I said, for your next husband. Her face crumpled completely. She sank to the floor right there in the hallway, her back against the wall, sobbing into her hands. Her whole body shook with the force of it, deep, wrenching sobs that sounded like they were being torn from somewhere deep inside her. I stood there for a moment, looking down at her. Part of me wanted to stay, wanted to believe that love was enough, wanted to believe that promises and tears could fix what was broken, wanted to be the hero who forgave and forgot and rebuilt from the ashes. But I knew better. Love without respect is just a pretty word, and respect isn't something you can apologize your way back into. It's earned through consistency, through how you treat someone when no one's watching, through the small moments that add up to a lifetime, through choosing someone every day, not just when you're afraid of losing them. She'd spent months showing me I wasn't worth those moments, wasn't worth her attention, her consideration, her basic courtesy. And now that the consequences were here, now that I was actually leaving, suddenly I mattered again. Suddenly I was worth changing for. But it was too late. The foundation had cracked too deeply. The trust had eroded too far. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. I opened the door and walked out, leaving her crying in the hallway of the house we'd built together. The house that was supposed to hold our dreams and our children and our retirement years. The house that was now just a building full of furniture and broken promises. I didn't look back, didn't pause, didn't second guess. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I could see the house getting smaller, could see all those blazing lights, could imagine her still on the floor, still crying, still unable to believe that this was really happening, but it was. Sometimes the end isn't dramatic, sometimes it's just quiet. A door closing, a car pulling away, a man finally choosing himself. 3 months later, I'd built a new life, a small one-bedroom apartment, quiet, clean, mine. Every item inside chosen by me, for me. For the first time in years, I could breathe. The divorce moved quickly. Lawyers handled everything. We barely spoke. I heard through friends that Sienna quit her job, couldn't face Jason, and that their brief relationship collapsed. He liked the idea of her, not the reality. Therapy helped. Dr. Martinez made me face how I'd spent years shrinking myself to fit Sienna's world. "You taught her how to treat you," she said. It hurt, but it was the kind of pain that heals. I started running, reading, cooking, living, rediscovering what I liked. The anger faded, replaced by something lighter, acceptance. Then one Saturday, Sienna knocked on my door. She looked wrecked, thinner, pale, wearing my old sweatshirt. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I ruined everything. You deserved better." I listened quietly. No rage, no pity, just peace. "I forgive you," I said. Her eyes flickered with hope. "But forgiveness isn't reconciliation." She cried harder. "You were a good husband." "I wasn't your backup," I said softly. "I was your foundation." She left in tears. I closed the door gently and felt 6 years lift off my shoulders. Over coffee, I thought about it all. The joke, the dinner, the moment I realized I'd been invisible. Betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet pattern of small cuts until you finally bleed out. Some jokes cost more than they're worth. Sienna learned that too late, and I learned that walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Forgiveness doesn't mean returning. Love isn't enough without respect, and I'm no one's backup plan. I'm my own first choice.